If you're lucky enough to still have your mom with you, this case will make you want to give her a call. Picture this. A guy goes duck hunting on a lake in Florida, but never comes back. People say maybe he drowned, maybe gators got him, but nobody could say for certain what happened out there on that lake. Finally, one small piece of the puzzle rises to the surface, and that's when the real hunting begins. This was proof some secrets won't stay sunk. Stick around because it's about to get real murky, man. This is 50 Ways to Catch a Killer.
December 16th, 2000.
FWC, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, got a call that 31-year-old Mike Williams had gone missing on Lake Seminole.
Lake Seminole is about an hour to the west of Tallahassee. It's a 37,000-acre lake that borders both Georgia and into Florida. It's a very large lake.
Mike was an avid duck hunter, and he had gone out to duck hunt that morning. When you go duck hunting, you leave very early in the morning so you can get set in the area that you want to be before the ducks start flying. The plan was for him to go hunting very early, return back to Tallahassee, and he and his wife, Denise, were going to go on an anniversary trip. When Mike didn't return when expected, Denise got very nervous.
The news of Mike Williams disappearing spread quickly in the area.
2 people were able to spot Mike's Ford Bronco with his boat trailer not far from a little dirt ramp, but there was no boat on the boat trailer, and there was obviously no Mike.
With the discovery of the vehicle, a picture begins to come into focus. All signs point to Mike never returning to his truck.
They found a pair of boots in the truck, but no gun case or decoys that are used for duck hunting. But what's common for duck hunting is you would wear waders, which are essentially, almost consider them fireman pants that you step into, and you will loop them over your shoulders with suspenders, and they're watertight and would allow you to be in the water without freezing.
His boots found in the truck, along with the fact his waders were not found in the truck, or maybe he fell overboard and succumbed to drowning as a result of having the waders on. But there was no sign of the boat or anything else from Mike. So we had to search the entirety of Lake Seminole.
As news spreads of Mike Williams' disappearance, more friends and members of the local community begin showing up to help with the search.
These are all guys that do duck hunting, so they would bring their boats, and all of a sudden this small search turned into a very large search.
Mike Williams and I met in freshman year of high school. We played football together. We ran track together. I taught him how to fish, and he taught me how to hunt. In Mike Williams, Denise found a true, genuine gem. Somebody that wanted to provide for his family, would give you the shirt off his back, and had morals.
Mike and Denise, they became a couple. They were both leaders in their very small class at North Florida Christian. Mike became the president by his senior year. He was a football player. Denise was a cheerleader. And eventually, they both ended up at Florida State University. And then shortly after graduating in 1994, they got married. On May 8th, 1999, they had a daughter.
We're just totally overwhelmed. She was due Tuesday, and she would have made me wait a whole nother year for Mother's Day, so she came yesterday so I could enjoy this day today with her.
It was unbelievable. I have a whole new respect for my wife and women in general and what they go through to bring a new child, new life into the world.
Only a year and a half later, Mike Williams goes missing.
Mike's brother Nick and his mother Cheryl became concerned when they got the call from Denise that Mike had not returned from the lake. Nick got in a vehicle and headed straight to Lake Seminole.
There were numerous persons on their own personal boats out there searching for Mike with the belief that something had happened, that he had possibly hit a stump or run out of gas.
These types of scenes become increasingly frantic as the sun starts going down. Law enforcement's faced with losing daylight hours, and they have no idea where he's at, no idea where to even concentrate their search. It's very cold. The weather conditions are getting worse.
One of the early additions to the search party is Mike Williams' best friend, Brian Winchester.
Brian Winchester and his dad are among that group, and they start searching in a particular area. They were almost done for the day, and on a whim, they head off into this particular cove. And lo and behold, that's where Mike's boat was found.
When the boat was found, it didn't show signs of being used much. It didn't have mud and debris in it that you would expect if you were getting out of the boat or launching it. And it had gas in the tank, meaning logically that it was turned off. It didn't run out of gas.
That didn't necessarily compute with the theory of him falling overboard, because what would normally happen in those situations is that you fall overboard, your engine's still going, and it's just going to keep putting along until it runs out of gas.
So now there's more questions. How did the boat get turned off? Did someone fall out of the boat? We're trying to develop a working theory of what happened. All of the pieces aren't connecting at this point.
After his boat was located, they figured, well, there's 75 yards between where the dirt ramp is that he went in and the boat, so they put that area in the center and then gridded off the entire area around it to make sure they were casting as wide a net as possible to search for Mike.
At this point, there's no evidence to suggest that foul play was involved, and this continues as a missing person case. And to aid in that search, upwards of 15 different boats were brought in, helicopters were brought in. They had people with long poles probing the water, looking for any sign of a body.
As of December of 2000, there had been 80 reported deaths by drowning on the expanse, 37,000 acres of Lake Seminole. 80 had drowned. 80 had floated to the surface. There wasn't a single body that was never recovered.
One of the things about drownings is that a body always turns up. What happens after a couple of days is the gases inside of the body expand and the bodies float, and then they're discovered. It became very odd in this situation that Mike's body was never found.
10 days into the search party noticed something floating in the water. And as they got closer, it turns out to be a hat floating right in the vegetation.
This was confirmed by his friend Brian Winchester, who said that is a hat that I've known Mike Williams to wear on hunting trips.
But with no trace of Mike, the question turns from where is he to what could have taken him.
And that's when a disturbing new theory started to emerge, that Mike Williams had been eaten by alligators.
In Florida, we have a lot of alligators. Lake Seminole especially has hundreds, if not thousands, of alligators. They range in sizes from small little baby ones all the way up 10, 12, 15-foot alligators. So it was entirely possible that alligators could have done this.
When I was searching, I looked down. There were a number of large alligators, probably 8 to 10 alligators that were 10 to 12 to 14 foot long, all around the boats.
Everyone in the area began to believe that alligator theory. Even Mike's other friends started believing that theory.
Logically, it made perfect sense to me that it was an accident and that an alligator had stuffed him somewhere and would come back later. It all added up to me.
Several months down the line, law enforcement made another discovery.
Another hunter was out on the water in Lake Seminole, and he came across a pair of waders.
2 days later, the group went out to the same spot where the waders were found, and a diver pulled up from the bottom of the lake bed a hunting jacket.
Within about 30 days, based upon the finding of the waders as well as the jacket and the closure of the case, with the official theory being that he was eaten by alligators, a circuit court judge signed a death certificate declaring Mike Williams dead.
Despite the official death certificate with drowning as the cause, investigators are troubled by details that don't seem to add up.
The hunting jacket sleeves were turned inside out, and inside that hunting jacket, in a pocket, was a piece of paper that was Mike Williams' hunting license. It wasn't even laminated, and yet it was in pristine condition. And when they started looking at the waders, one thing didn't make sense. If they had been sitting in the water for the last 6 months, they should have had algae and sediment all over the waders, and yet they were in pristine condition.
The waders didn't show any destruction from an alligator. Law enforcement had questions, but without a body and without the hope of finding a body at this point, there's really nothing else to do. During the search operation, Mike's wife, Denise, never came to Lake Seminole. But after Mike was declared dead, she did go to the lake and she laid some flowers down in the area. Once Mike Williams was declared dead, it ended the investigation. Everything had been checked off. There was a tragedy on a lake, a young father was dead, and his remains were not recovered.
But not everyone is buying the official explanation of Mike's death, especially Mike's mother, Cheryl Williams.
Cheryl was on a daily walk, and Brian Winchester came riding by, and he looked at Cheryl and he said, "Isn't it amazing that they declared Mike dead so quickly?" And Cheryl looked at him and said, "You know that evidence was planted."
Mike's mom, Cheryl, did not believe in that alligator theory. She had a feeling that something far more sinister happened to her son.
Cheryl, Mike's mom, went to Lake Seminole. She walked up to the edge of the lake, not far from where Mike's Bronco had been found. She looked across the lake, she closed her eyes.
And all of a sudden, a voice comes in my head. Mike is not in Lake Seminole. He did not drown.
So what did happen to Mike? If he's not alive, but he did not drown in that water, what are the other possibilities that could have happened to him? Cheryl would say, "Until God tells me that my child is dead, I cannot give up looking for him." Cheryl was relentless in not giving up on finding Mike. She would even write letters to the governor every day. She would have flyers made, even a billboard put up looking for him.
Unfortunately, a lot of people just flat out dismissed her. They said she was clinging to false hopes and that she wasn't facing reality as it relates to her son. Miss Cheryl was insistent he was not eaten by alligators, he was not in Lake Seminole, and that something bad had happened.
But others close to Mike want to let the past be and not reopen old wounds.
All of Cheryl's efforts to keep this case public really angered Mike's wife, Denise Williams. Denise was ready to move on with her life and would tell Cheryl that Mike is dead, that his body was not going to be recovered.
Around that time period, it became known that Brian Winchester and Denise Williams, they were in fact dating. Many people found this a little bit odd because Brian Winchester was in fact best friends with Mike Williams. But nobody could wrap their head around why Brian Winchester would have left his wife for Denise Williams. All of a sudden, there's a discovery of insurance policies where Denise is a sole beneficiary. Brian Winchester's the underwriter. She's applied for money before the search is over. And then Brian and Denise get married. And on top of everything else, they're living in the house that was Denise and Mike Williams' house.
For most people aware of the case, this is not a good look.
It's not criminal to marry your best friend's widowed wife. It's not criminal to take out a life insurance policy, and when that person dies, you collect. All of these things are fine, but when you start putting them together, it raises a lot of suspicion. It paints a picture that something nefarious has happened.
But there's still not a whole lot that law enforcement can do. There's no forensic evidence they can go back and get. Nothing was really seized because it wasn't a death investigation. It was a missing persons investigation. I don't have a probable cause for an arrest, probable cause for searches. At the time, there's really nothing they could do.
For almost 2 decades, folks in Jackson County weren't sure what happened out there on that lake. Was Denise Williams just a heartbroken widow left behind after her husband vanished? Detectives are about to get some shocking new information that will pull the veil off this grieving widow.
Cheryl Williams, a Florida State alum herself, went to the faculty and found one of the world's leading experts on alligators. And he actually did a report for her. And that report said this theory that her son, Mike, died because he was eaten by an alligator in late December makes no sense.
What she learned was it's very uncommon for alligators to feed in the winter months because they essentially go into a hibernative state in the cold months.
Cheryl's relentless efforts finally pay off.
She was persistent. She kept writing letters. Eventually, she succeeded. Florida Department of Law Enforcement agreed to reopen the investigation. August 5th of 2016, everything changed. Throughout this time period, Miss Cheryl is out there fighting.
Cheryl never gave up, and 16 years after Mike's disappearance came a much-needed break in the case.
Brian and Denise have been separated, and Denise has filed for divorce. Brian was in really bad shape in terms of addictions to sex and porn. He is literally going into suicidal despair.
On August 5th, 2016, Denise gets in her car and Brian Winchester had snuck into her car. He had with him a gun. He brandished the gun against her and ordered her to drive to a particular area.
Denise was on the phone. Brian told her to hang up the phone and that they needed to talk. Denise complied, and they started driving. Denise was very level-headed. They kept driving, and they parked at a CVS pharmacy and was able to kind of talk him down.
I had been with Brian 2 or 3 nights prior to him kidnapping Denise. He didn't look good. He was a tormented man.
From that incident, Denise would drive him back to his car, and Denise let him out. She had just had a gun held to her by her estranged husband. So Denise went to the sheriff's office, and she gave a statement that recounted the harrowing environment that Brian put her in.
Denise's statement is intended to paint herself as the victim, but to law enforcement, it's the opening they need.
It didn't take long for the sheriff's department to contact Florida Department of Law Enforcement and say, we think we may have your big break. Denise Williams is sitting here in our office being interviewed by our folks. If you want to take a crack at her, come on down. And they did.
This is Detective Salvo with Denise Winchester. Time's approximately 3:02 p.m.
A Florida Department of Law Enforcement investigator goes into the room with her in the interview room. And they say, look, this just happened. He just did this. Do you think maybe he had something to do with Mike Williams' death?
I do not, and I never have. I would have never married him if I thought that.
Where do you think Mike's buried at?
Oh, I have no idea.
She won't admit to anything. She won't say anything. Maybe she knows, maybe she doesn't know. But needless to say, at that particular time, law enforcement takes a very large interest in this.
With Denise in their crosshairs, detectives plan their next move. They're not letting her slip away.
On August 5th, 2016, Brian Winchester was arrested for this kidnapping. This charge carried the possible punishment of up to life in prison. And that was the next hope for law enforcement, was that this pressure might cause something else to crack. Brian does what's called an open plea to the court on the charges. And at that sentencing hearing, where the court is going to determine the punishment that he receives, Denise comes in. She talks about how this affected her, how scared she was, and she ends up asking the court to sentence him to life in prison. But she doesn't know what Fuchs and I know.
Brian had already told police everything that happened years prior that morning out on the lake.
We're trying to give closure to Miss Cheryl about what happened to her son. We have a person there on an unsolved homicide that's a suspect, but quite frankly, we have no evidence. The kidnapping charges in the state of Florida is punishable by life imprisonment. So we're left with a very difficult decision about what we can do to balance both of those things.
We worked out an immunity agreement. In that agreement, Brian Winchester would tell us what he knew about the disappearance of Mike Williams and Denise's involvement, but could not be charged for anything that he told us.
So 212 on October 9th, 2017. This is Tully Sparkman, investigator with State Attorney's Office. We're here to take a proffer from Brian Winchester.
So I've known Denise my whole life. We started having an affair October 13th, 1997.
He says, Denise and I were having an affair long before Mike Williams' death.
Denise made it clear she would never get divorced, primarily because of appearances. She is ultra concerned about the way that she appears to the world.
Denise was scared of how people in Tallahassee would view her if she was divorced. And she made it clear that divorce was not an option. So they started coming up with different scenarios that involved Mike being out of the picture.
She wanted a scenario where it wasn't a murder, but it was an accident.
Sitting in the room listening to this, it is so quiet because we're about to find out what actually happened.
The plan that was discussed was that he was going to be wearing waders. And the belief was somebody falls in the water with waders, you're going down. We went out like we were going hunting. I got him to stand up and I pushed him into the water. He got his jacket off and his waders off. He was in a panic. I didn't know what to do. And I ended up shooting him.
We have to still find Mike Williams' body. And that was part of the deal, to show us where the body is.
Brian escorted us all to a location. This spot is less than 5 miles from where Mike's mother, Cheryl, lives.
After 4 days of digging, law enforcement makes a very somber discovery.
And lo and behold, there's Mike Williams, still in his boxers, still in a pair of socks with his wedding ring on underneath a pair of gloves.
Remember, Cheryl all these years clung to the desperate belief that Mike was still alive. That was where he was all those years, 5 miles from where we're sitting right now.
She repeatedly stated, I knew he was not eating alligators. I knew he was not in Lake Seminole. I knew it, I knew it.
On May 8th, 2018, 18 years after Mike Williams disappeared, his wife, Denise Williams, was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The star witness at Denise's trial was Brian Winchester.
He was in the water, and he was, like, struggling. He was taking the waders and the jacket off. And he swam over to one of those stumps and held on to it. And he was panicking, and I was panicking. And I didn't know how to get out of that situation. So I loaded my gun, and I made 1 or 2 circles around, and as I passed by, I shot him.
Where did you shoot him?
In the head.
Denise Williams was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and accessory after fact of murder.
I had no idea that Denise was involved. I didn't believe it at all until years later.
Brian and Denise did not count on Cheryl being the person who would eventually poke holes in the alligator theory, in the theory that Mike had drowned. They didn't know that Cheryl would be as relentless as she was in proving that what everybody was thinking happened to Mike was not what happened to Mike.
Cheryl didn't give up, never relented, until we found out what really happened to Mike.
In cases I have prosecuted, I often tell the victims and the victim's family that the wheels of justice sometimes turn slowly, but they do turn. I cannot think of a more perfect example than this case involving Mike Williams. Miss Cheryl's persistence and her love for her child is what allowed this case to be prosecuted. Without her beliefs, this would have been a missing person, and nothing would have ever been done.
There is no How to Find Your Missing Child manual available to help mothers in their search for lost children. I did what God told me to do.
What I miss the most about my friend Mike is his goofiness. He was funny, and he was pure and genuine. You can't wrap it up in one word. What little bit of good I have in me, I would like to attribute to lessons he helped me learn.
Brian Winchester and Denise Williams wanted everyone to believe that Mike was gator food. But Cheryl Williams wasn't gonna let the story go down like that.
Mike is not in Lake Seminole.
She pushed for years, refusing to let her son's name get buried by lies. As she suspected, the gator story was a crop. Cheryl followed her gut and uncovered the truth. Mike's best friend and wife were behind everything from the start. Case closed on this fatal love triangle, and one more way to catch a killer.